Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Getting In, a College Coach Conversation. I'm your host this week, Ian Fisher, and we've got kind of a special show lined up for you. We will talk in our last segment on finance about tuition reciprocity programs and how students might think about attending public universities outside of their home state. So you want to stick around for that. But we've devoted our first two segments to our guest today, who is the current Dean of Admission and Financial Aid at Hampshire College in Amherst, Massachusetts. I'm excited to welcome him here to the show. We've got Fumio Sugihara. Hi, Fumio. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Really excited to have you here. When I was first starting my admission career at Reed College a while ago, you were the director of admission of one of the other colleges in that 5-college Northwest Consortium, University of Puget Sound.
Yes.
You've also worked for Marlborough College, recently closed in Vermont, but another small liberal arts college, Bennington College, Juniata College, Bowdoin. And so the place I want to start with this question of you is, what's with all the small colleges, man? Like, why are you so excited about the type of learning that happens at these institutions?
Well, because I'm a product. I went to Bowdoin, and I was kind of this kid out of New Jersey who went to a really good public high school, but really didn't quite understand small colleges. And my first 2 years at Bowdoin was just, I'll admit, it was a real struggle, just trying to figure out what is happening. And then in my sophomore year, it just clicked. And I had these faculty members who were like, why aren't you studying this? Or why aren't you doing that? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just trying to get through college. And, so the faculty were super invested, and they were pushing me in new ways, like, saying, well, you should do this philosophy course, or you should do this gender studies course. And so once it settled in, I really dedicated myself to my studies. And then I really didn't look back. And I feel that experience, really, I will say it transformed me in ways that I still apply those lessons today. And I'm excited by new questions and new challenges. And I think because of that liberal arts experience, and I think some people see big challenges and it's kind of intimidating. And I see them, and I think students who, like yourself, probably go and see like, wow, this is an exciting and interesting question. And so that perspective and orientation is what I look for in these small colleges. And I feel like it's pretty unique to smaller institutions.
Yeah, I would agree. And, my experience at Reed, I think, was marked by that same sort of connection with faculty members and opportunities to explore in different spaces, and a general uncertainty about what I was doing for much of the time that I was there. I always kind of say, like, I wish I could do that over again, knowing what I know now. But I think part of the point is that you're figuring out along the way. That's part of the experience of the college, is feeling uncomfortable and then developing that confidence as time goes on. It's a little bit of a harder thing to present to a prospective student, however, a high school student, to talk to them about this discomfort, to talk to them about the challenges that they might experience in college. How have you come to talk about that opportunity for students that are considering Hampshire or have considered many of the other colleges you've worked at?
Well, I guess I first start to say, like, I start with the fun factor. And because
That's probably
there's
good.
there's so much about this process, like the process of admission. Like even the word, it's like a horrible word sometimes when you think about it.
Yeah.
So much of it is about putting the student on the spot and almost taking away a sense of ownership. And so I start with that. No, this should be enjoyable. Like, and being challenged and being made uncomfortable doesn't always have to be a bad thing. It could be this incredible experience. And so, I really try to get students to focus on the experience, and focus on what they hope to achieve. And again, that's a little bit different than saying, well, the outcome is this.
Yeah.
I don't want, the outcome is fine. Like, go to college, you'll get a great outcome. Like, that's studied and all proved. Like, what do you want? What do you want to be? What is it that you want to be prepared for? And how is it that you want to meet the world? Those are questions that I think, and you ask students those questions, and it's like, yeah, like that's exciting, that's energizing. But
Yeah.
if it's about, well, your SAT scores are this, and your grade point average needs to be this, and if we move into this kind of the language of rigor, about being, well, it's we're too hard for you to get in. You might get in, and you'll be fine. But if we think about how kind of inaccurate and how unfriendly that guidance is from just a personal perspective, and then you move it to a pedagogic experience, a pedagogic perspective, it's like, wow, we're basically saying don't go to college.
Yeah.
So I try to say, like, first, college should have fun. Like, you should have fun. Like, there's nothing wrong with fun, and fun sometimes means challenging yourselves in ways that one you didn't expect, because it's, you don't know what's going to happen. And a part of that also is preparation, because we don't know how life is going to unfold. And so meet your challenges with a certain confidence and a certain kind of inquiry and questioning, and that it's not necessarily going to make things easier, but it can definitely make it more enjoyable. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. There is that kind of questioning confidence. And one of the things that I, took away from my read experience as an outcome to your point is you're not going to come away with a clear sense of exactly what you're going to do next, but you're going to have the confidence that you've got the skills to figure it out, that you get to explore and find that right fit for yourself. There's no, pre-admissions major, right? When you go into an admissions career, you kind of
exactly.
find your way into that space. And so it's cool to think about how people will take something like you were a women's studies and environmental studies major as an undergrad, and now you're a dean of admission and financial aid. There is not a direct line between those two things, but they are connected, and the experience of your education is connected as well. I'm struck as you're presenting in this way that it really sounds like a conversation you're having with a student. And I'm wondering, in the 20 plus years you've been in admission, have you seen a greater role taken by parents in this process, where the conversation is less between a student and an institution and more between parents as stakeholders and parents asking questions about outcomes? How has that shifted over time, and what do you conceive of the responsibility of institutions to parents?
Yeah, I think parents are definitely much more involved, and there's evidence in a lot of ways of that. I But I think one of the things that we need to be careful of is that we take parent involvement as less student involvement,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not sure that's the case. I think
Yeah, good point.
that's a mindset on the part of admissions professionals, and it's one thing I say, no, like, students might not be engaged in the way that I was used to them being engaged with 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean they're not engaged. Those are really different concepts, and we have to be really mindful of that. So yes, parents are more involved because the price point is really high, and we are asking a lot of families. It's estimated family contribution, because we're not asking that of the student, we're asking that of the family. And so as tuition has increased, well, that expectation has increased, and that dollar value has increased. And we can get into I mean, there's a whole money side, but
Sure.
again, in just very rudimentary perspectives, that has changed the way that parents view their investment. So there's the parental or the family unit investment, and the student investment in their education. And those have really changed. And to some degree, the financial on the part of the parent has, for many of our families, has become much more.
Yeah.
And so yeah, parents are involved much more than I'm used to, and sometimes it's very uncomfortable, because there are those families, there are those parents who, or those guardians who, kind of sideline their student. And I feel my role is to acknowledge that that's coming from a place of, it's not that the parent is trying to sideline them, but they're trying to get information that helps to contextualize this process
Yeah.
relative to the expense. So one, understand that, but also to kind of say, hey, you over there, the student, yeah, let's come back here and let's try to get all of us on the same page so that the process is one where both the parent, the student is achieving their needs, which are very, very real. So I feel like sometimes there are the helicopter parents or the tiger parent, whatever we want to call them at this time of year. But I think most parents are just really concerned, and they
Yeah.
they have this tremendous love for their child, and they have this tremendous responsibility that happens to be financial, and they're trying to understand that. And so, so I tend to try to be more forgiving about the parent involvement, but I do need to note it is real. It does seem to be more intense when you get into the more selective colleges, and
Yeah.
this is one of the things I've appreciated about my past
Agree.
few gigs
Yeah.
is that so it's there is a pressurization that happens when we spend a lot of time talking about these 25 colleges, when there's many more that do wonderful work and actually offer pretty reasonable price points as well. So I try to be forgiving, but they're always the parents, and I say they're the kind of stump the chump. Like you're up there and they're just asking questions
They want to catch you.
just to
Yeah.
stump you, and it's like,
Yeah.
is this really helpful?
Yeah.
And so of course, but that's there are always those individuals in any context, and we have to be able to, as educators and as professionals, we have to keep that into context and realize that our greatest service isn't necessarily to those individuals, but to a broader group. And we best meet them with a understanding and kind of thoughtfulness, and not kind of uh, reducing them to generalized categories of parent, student, or helicopter, or whatever.
Yeah, I think understanding, especially the place that it comes from, whether it's concern about financial investment, concern about a student's ability to be successful. I think with, institutions like the ones where you have worked, the ones you have represented, there's much more independence in many ways. There's much more opportunity for exploration. And I think that is both an opportunity and also concerning in some cases, because the student has to make the most of it in many respects.
Yeah.
I do find, and in my experience, the students that have considered a lot of smaller liberal arts colleges in many ways are given that space by their parents, either because they know something about those institutional experiences. My parents are products of Hampshire College, where my mom went, and my dad went to Wake Forest, but his first job as a professor was at Amherst. And so the two of them really believed in small colleges and gave that space to me to find that opportunity to explore. And I think you find that with these small institutions. And I'm wondering, just as students are exploring these different spaces, especially given your perspective as a representative of many schools that are quite similar, how do you encourage students to find the differences, to find the space where they're going to be a best fit? Is that even an idea that you embrace, or is it one where you kind of say, nah, fits out? We're kind of thinking about, students can fit just about anywhere. It's more about thinking about opportunities to grow when they get there. What's your take on that choice problem for students?
That is a very well framed question. And it's a really interesting one. And clearly you sat on my side of the fence, because I think it's fine for families and students to talk about fit. I actually think it's a little, I think it's a little ridiculous when we as colleges talk about fit.
Yeah.
And so I actually try to get my staff to say, no. Think about the student and think about, are they going to get the best possible experience? And are they going to achieve the success they're looking for? Like, don't think about fit. Think about, is the student going to achieve what they need from this? Because fit in that regard is way too narrow from the
Yeah.
side of the institution. It really is. It's really setting up archetypes, and is kind of locking us into this very stuck model, which puts up all sorts of barriers to all sorts of students. So I do look at fit a little bit differently. But I think it's fine for the students because the students know who they are.
Yeah.
The students have a sense of their identity, of who they might want to be. They might not share that with the world. They might not be ready yet, but they have these instincts and these thoughts and these ideas and a certain clarity. They might not have all the check marks and like the cost benefit analysis that we learn over our whatever 40 years on this planet. But they have this perspective, and so they know their fit. Um, we get an application, like we get an application and a transcript and the recommendations, and like
Yeah.
we don't know these students. I mean, I don't want to disparage what we do in our work, but to know a student to assign the fit at the specificity that we think we're doing in admissions offices, I think that's kind of false.
Yeah.
Encouraging a student to trust who they are, to trust their instincts, to think about a place in nuanced ways so that they can say, am I a fit for this? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I actually ask students to think between the lines, like colleges, like people, are aspirational.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we use aspirational language and we do all those things. I say, well, go to their website, spend a little time, read the materials, pull out like 10 phrases or concepts, or it's like 10 things that you think are their aspirational language. Like, who does this college want to be? If it was a person, who does it want to be? And then look at those and say, is that what I want to be? How does that align with who I am? And again, that's kind of cutting through the advertising speak, and it's kind of looking at the context in which the college wants to plant itself and saying, how does this mesh with me? Like, it's saying, listen, try it on, try on this language. How would you, it doesn't have to be 100%. I mean, it never is, but try it on, see how it feels. And, that's a great way of cutting through the clutter. And I shouldn't say clutter, cutting through our great marketing and
Fair enough.
seeing,
Yeah.
and,
Good
and
save.
seeing and seeing things that from a different angle, but also continuing to put themselves at the center of that perspective building.
Well, I think that's so right on, the idea about colleges being aspirational and having potentially a goal, a direction where they're heading. And especially now, where there is so much potential change. There's this conversation about the enrollment cliff. There are lots of conversations about the cost of education. There are conversations about what 21st century education should look like. And I think that colleges are starting to think about those ideas as they move through time and are trying to set themselves up in a way to progress in many respects. And so, talking to the alum who graduated from Hampshire in, 1985 is probably not representative of what Hampshire is going to be for the next 4 years. And it's really important to think about what that will look like. And I'd love to put a pin in that and come back, because I do want to talk about your time at Hampshire and drill a little bit more into the experiences you've had in the 2 years you've been at the college. So we'll take a break here and come on back and talk a little bit about enrollment at Hampshire these days.